What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be making another set of full card picks, this time on fight night Dolidze versus Imavov. It's been a whole week since we've had some fights, but we don't have any weekends off of fights until April, to my knowledge. So solid next couple of months coming up here, and we have like the best pay-per-view cards. So let's get these fight nights out of the way. Starting with the first fight of the night, Thomas Petersen taking on Jamal Pogues. This is kind of an easy one for me. I'm going Thomas Petersen. It's heavyweight, so anything can happen, and these guys aren't like too vastly, I don't know. One person isn't more skilled than the other, I guess that's how I word it. But I'm going to have to hedge with Jamal Pogues losing this fight for sure. I just think he sucks. And Thomas Petersen has a lot more knockout power. He picks better boxing strikes on the feet. Grappling exchanges, I might hedge Jamal Pogues, but I don't know, honestly. I might still even just lean Thomas Petersen because he has a nice submission on his resume. He's 8-1. He has a winning streak right now intact. He has a lot of knockout power. Let's hedge Thomas Petersen for this one by knockout. Moving on up the card, Landon Quinones taking on Marquel Mederos. This one's a little bit rough for me. I'm going to lean with Marquel Mederos because I like some of his regional fights that I've seen. But Landon Quinones is tough as hell, and he came in here. I think he's only fought like once or twice in the octagon, if I'm not mistaken. But he took on Nasrat Hakparas last, and they went to a decision, even though Nasrat was smoking him on the feet, kind of just definitively winning the fight. Landon stayed in it the whole time, and he had moments to do things, which made me a little bit nervous as somebody that picked Nasrat back then. I just didn't expect it from him. When you see that type of toughness in somebody, you can't just completely count them out. So, you know, this is the tough one, but I am going to lean towards Marquel Mederos. I think he is way better on the feet with the boxing. Moving on up the card, Luana Carolina taking on Julija Stoliarenko. I don't know how to fucking pronounce her name, but I'm definitely leaning with her. She got that armbar over Molly McCann last year when I did not have her winning the fight at all. And after that, I don't want to pick against her. I did get Luana Carolina's last fight correct, but it was low-key pure luck. She got robbed. I mean, she robbed whoever her opponent was completely. And it was one of the bigger robberies last year, so it doesn't even really count for me. So I have to lean Julija. I think that she's going to be able to get it to the ground like she does, and maybe not wrap up a submission instantly, but probably just demolish her with that lay and pray, style, wet blanket her. Moving on up the card into the featherweight division, Yeong versus Blake Bilder. This one's tough for me, bro. I was so high on Blake Bilder in 2023. I thought he was going to come into the UFC and be one of the next bigger things at featherweight, and then he drops a fight to Kyle Nelson after like his first bout in the octagon, which was just unbelievable to watch, bro. And no hate on Kyle Nelson, but he is not that level, I feel like. I thought that Blake Bilder was much better on the feet and could mix in the grappling, but he just did not apply it in that fight, and it makes me nervous when he's taking on a young, quick, powerful boxer. Not the greatest grappler. I think when it comes to the grappling, Blake Bilder shreds him. So I'm going to trust Blake Bilder here by a decision, but it's a close fight, man. Moving on up the card, Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez in the welterweight division. I'm going to side with Themba Gorimbo. He looked surprisingly good in his last fight against Takashi Sato, and I think that's who it was. Let me just double check here. I don't want to be saying a bunch of goofy shit, but he was doing really good in his last fight. I remember watching that one, kind of just like waking up pretty late into the card, going through, and that was like the first fight I was on, and with his grappling, that's his bread and butter, honestly. Pete Rodriguez, not nearly as experienced. Just take him down, look for those subs. If you really want to play it comfortable, I guess, lay and pray. Go for a finish, though, Themba. I think this is the type of fight where he can get one and put himself out there. Moving on up the card in the flyweight division, Azat Maksum taking on Charles Energy Johnson. I will never pick Charles Johnson ever again. It would have to be the flukiest shit that he somehow beats Azat Maksum. 17-0. Somebody that's going to make a name for themselves this year if he can even fight 2 more times after this spot this year. He really will. He's really good. If you watch his fights, he's good everywhere. I feel like I don't want to be too bland, but there's not much you can really say about this guy. He's just a flyweight that's good everywhere, and he's undefeated, and he's from some different part of the world, so everything hedges in his favor that you want to trust him. Not to mention Charles Johnson has looked absolutely terrible in his last bouts. I can't believe I've ever trusted him. Azat Maksum all the way. Moving on up the card, Molly McCann taking on Deanna Belbita. I'm starting to notice a lot of these fights are set up to be like obvious favorites, so maybe I shouldn't be leaning towards all of them. That didn't help me at UFC Canada. I'm going to lean with Molly McCann. She looked really good on the scale for strawweight. She doesn't look like Meatball anymore. She just looks like Molly. And Deanna Belbita, is mid. She was doing decent, and then she ran into Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and she got smoked and reminded that she's pretty mid. I don't really know what else to say for this one. Molly McCann has a lot more power on the feet. She's just more aggressive. I feel like Diana Belbita is going to be trying to play catch-up, just kind of like getting tagged a lot on the feet. She might even get finished, so I'm going with Molly McCann. Up the card, welterweight division, and we still have 5 fights. Goddamn. Gilbert Urbina taking on Charlie Radtke. I'm going to trust Gilbert Urbina. I didn't trust him in his last bout. I thought the UFC would be too much for him, and it would just be a sad story where all 3 of him and his brothers made it into, trying to fight for the UFC and never could really break through. But nah, he did really good in his last bout. He actually kind of obliterated the last guy he fought. Let me just double check on Gilbert Urbina's page real quick. Oh yeah, Orion Koski. He's not that good, but I was thinking Orion would be able to do something there and like hold him on the ground because he had just beaten Blood Diamond. And at the time, I didn't exactly know Blood Diamond was so terrible. So yeah, Orion Koski, not the greatest one, and then he lost to Brian Battle right before that. I've got to side with Gilbert Urbina. He's just a little bit higher level than Charles Radtke. Moving on up the card. Oh Lord, forgive me. I'm gonna start with Makhmud Muradov versus Aliaskhab Khizriev. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. We're gonna hear the announcer say it later, and then I'll know for sure how to say it good from now on. So I'm sorry, but anyways, he's 12-0. I don't know if he's Dagestani. I should have double checked that, honestly. I should be doing my due diligence. But I trust this guy. Go watch his fights. It's going to be hard not to. He's a tank. He has hella power on the feet. He goes for good strikes, like good mix-up of strikes. He's not just like basic winging hooks and overhands and shit. Although he does do that sometimes. And then he has the grappling. Makhmud just has striking. It's tough. I'm going to have to go with Aliaskhab Khizriev by decision. Moving on up the card, Viviane Araujo taking on Natalia Silva. Natalia Silva is a ridiculous striker on the feet. She's a great prospect for women's MMA. I'm very high on her. This is a great test by the UFC, a ranked fighter in Viviane Araujo. Somebody that's tough, somebody that can knock you the fuck out in that flyweight division for women. But somebody that's probably not going to be able to go tit for tat with Natalia. I think eventually Natalia is going to be slowing her down with them strikes. She's going to be beating her up on the feet. And it's going to be a really close fight. I think it's going to be 2-1. I think Viviane is going to stay in it, and it might even be a sleeper fight. I'm going to lean with Natalia Silva, though. And now the feature fight of the night, Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikov. A hard one. I could see a scenario where I call this for Randy, and later tonight Muslim makes it look easy. But he's old. He has a good record, but it's honestly kind of a little bit padded. Like, even in the UFC, he doesn't have the craziest wins. While as Randy Brown, the only person I could think of that he lost to in a recent time was Jack Della Maddalena, and that's like the best welterweight prospect currently coming up. So, he's also younger. He's really good at using his range. He's like 6'2", 6'3" at welterweight. He's a big guy. He's lanky. Again, I think the youth and durability is really just what makes you want to lean towards Randy Brown. Not to mention, he is a sleeper good welterweight. Like, he could be considered a dark horse of that division if Jack Della Maddalena wasn't climbing it right now. Moving on up the card into the co-main event. Money Moicano, my guy. Renato Moicano taking on Drew Dober. I'm leaning towards Moicano. I think he's going to be able to melt Dober on the feet and eventually find a submission. I just really see it happening. Dober isn't fighting a black man, so he's not going to be able to channel that inner Chad Dober and just melt Renato. He hasn't shown to be able to do that yet. So I'm going to lean with Renato. I think it's unfortunate that he's been pulled out with injury and whatnot for so long because his name value really skyrocketed after that interview he had last year after whatever fight it was. The Money Moicano one, though. So let's get him back in the limelight. Like, lightweight doesn't necessarily need more big names, but it's always good to have some more, exciting prospects circulating around the top, especially people that have a mouthpiece on them. Renato has a great fighting style. He's got 5-star jiu-jitsu, I feel like. Maybe not 5-star. He's got 4.5-star jiu-jitsu. Barely anybody in that division will really moss him on the ground, right? And he has good striking. But what makes him separate from everybody else, in my opinion, is that mentality. Renato is just a dog, and you'll see it in some people at lightweight. Not too many of them, though. So, again, leaning with Renato Moicano. I think he's going to find his range on the feet with, like, straight punches specifically. I think he's going to beam Dober with, like, a straight right hand. Dober's going to be walking up back against the cage. Renato's going to start looking for, like, a standing ghillie or going to take the back. Somehow he's going to find his way into wrapping up a submission and winning this co-main event. Moving on into the main event of the night, Roman Dolidze taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Wow, my brain is a little bit scrambled. I'm sorry. I'm kind of surprised that Roman Dolidze is 12-2. You know, I guess I just really haven't considered the fact that he's actually pretty damn solid. I'm really high on Nassourdine Imavov, even though I did pick Chris Curtis to beat him, and I also picked Sean Strickland to beat him. It's right about one of them. I'm super high on him. He's just technical. He has this chill vibe about him that he's like a calculated killer. Roman Dolidze has a similar-ish vibe, but he does seem a little bit more lighthearted, and I don't know, this guy reminds me of Peter Yeong. This guy reminds me of those types of fighters where they're almost stoic, but they have this cool aura about them. That's what Nassourdine gives off, and he fights like that. All he needs to do is find himself in a big win here to push him right back up into that middleweight conversation. They might even make him versus Chris Curtis happen again down the line, because Chris Curtis is in a similar spot in that division, kind of just filling the spaces. Now, who do I think technically is better? Obviously Imavov. He's just, look at how they strike. On paper, he's smoother. He has more combinations. He probably throws it with a little bit more crack, but I would say Roman Dolidze has a lot more power. On the ground, I would definitely say Nassourdine Imavov. He's a technical wizard. So we're going to lead with Nassourdine Imavov, getting this one done by a late submission. Follow me on TikTok if you want my early news for fights or predictions or whatnot and betting odds. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I will catch y'all with the reaction to tonight's fights.